Today, in part 3 of the series Building a Marriage, the topic is Infatuation Happens, Love is Built. Just what is love? A desire, duty, or both? What does the Bible say regarding the promise of future love and romantic fulfillment? And how should we decide to love? Here's Pastor Seth.
Thomas Edison was working on trying to invent the electric light bulb, and if you've heard the story, I think he used almost 800 filaments to try to get that little glow inside the bulb. He tried all kinds of gases, he tried all kinds of containers, and one night, dead in the middle of the night, about 3 a.m., he's in his lab, and he suddenly sees a glow. He picks up his device, he runs out of the lab, out into the dark night, he runs to his house, inside, up the stairs, in the darkness, into his bedroom. He wakes up his wife, and he wakes her up and says, "Darling, look!" She rolls over and opens her eyes, and she says, "Oh, put out the light and come to bed." You would never do that when you were dating, of course. But somehow that makes sense when you're married. About several months, about a month into my marriage with Mindy, I rolled over one morning about 6 a.m. and I looked at her, and, well, let me just give this caveat. I don't think anybody's really looking all that good at 6 a.m. after you've been asleep all night. I certainly have. Certainly don't look very good. Sometimes in the morning when I wake up and go to the mirror and look inside, I think, who is that guy? I sort of recognize me, but you got the hair going in all kinds of directions, and you've got the green stuff in your eyes, and it looks like your mouth has been ajar for a while. And every once in a while I can tell, it seems like I have a little pool of dried drool that is there. And then the breath, the whole breath, it's not good, not good. Well, I rolled over and looked at Mindy, and I had no emotion. We're a month into our marriage. Zip. Nil. Nada. I'm looking at her, she's still asleep, and these were the next thoughts in my mind. I thought I loved her. I was real sure we were supposed to get married. What happened? And it seemed like there'd been a home invasion, and it had found me, the guy had found me, and taken my prized possession of the feelings of love and made his escape somewhere in the dead of night. And then the last thought that went through my mind was, I just signed up a month ago for a lifetime of marriage. And I started to become frantic. Now, I was a product of several things, including the times. One of the questions that you'll hear often and people talk about before they get married is, what is love? If you look at most movies and sitcoms, love and most of those things put in front of our eyes to see assumes a particular definition of love, that love is an emotion. It is a feeling. Love as passion or love as romance. Now, I like all those things. Those are really good things to happen, to occur. And I remember when we were dating, there were times when I felt that. And then I remember when we were dating being very confused when the very next week it seemed like those things were sort of waning. And I just kind of went up and down based on my emotions, really confused about, do I love Mindy or do I not? Do I love Mindy or, during the dating time? Sometimes people will say, you'll hear young couples say, we don't need a piece of paper to show how much we love each other. And what they're saying is, they're using that word love with a very particular definition. That particular definition has to do with passion, feelings, or romance. Now, if that's how love is defined, and those things are coursing through your veins, what in the world would a piece of paper add to that? That makes sense to the person that says that. But in our culture, we oftentimes mistake love for infatuation. Infatuation, I don't hear that word said very much anymore. When I was growing up, infatuation was the strong feelings of romance, passion, the feelings of love. That's what we talked about infatuation. I don't hear that very much anymore. And one of the things that's strange is that infatuation can masquerade as love. And if I'm feeling those strong feelings, romance, passion, it's easy for me to assume I'm in love. Now, those things can happen with someone other than your spouse when you're at work or when you're at school or in your neighborhood. That can become very confusing. But when you're dating, this infatuation, of course, is always something that somebody else has. But in our case, we've got the real thing. We've got real love. What drives infatuation? There are two really strong drivers of infatuation. The first is physical attraction, and the second driver is something along this line: you make me feel really special. You make me feel really special. You put those two things in motion, you have infatuation. Now, whether love as romance, feelings, passion, or infatuation, however you want to say it, it does have its good place for it. It often gets two people to the wedding altar to say I do with each other. That's a good thing. But you try to build a marriage on that definition of love as romance, feelings, passion, or infatuation, and you're going to be in for a hard dose of reality. Because the kind of love that's needed to build a marriage is something very different. Something needs to be added to those feelings of and passion. Something that a love that is built usually has to do with actions, attitudes, acts of service, acts of kindness. Infatuation is driven by what you do for me. A marriage kind of love is driven not by what you do for me, but what I do for you. That is a very different kind of animal. It's almost the exact polar opposite of that. To give you a few examples of this, let's look at 1 Peter 4:8. Let's skip ahead, Lisa, to 1 Peter 4:8. Above all, love each other deeply, because love covers over a multitude of sins. If somebody's mean to you, you may not feel loving, or you may not even like that person. But if this is a relative, somebody you have to relate to, somebody you have to love, you learn to love this person by overlooking their weaknesses. That's called love. Galatians 5:13. You, my brothers, are called to be free. Do not use your freedom to indulge the sinful nature. What about my needs? For example, rather serve one another in love. Another example of love seen in action or attitude. Jesus said, I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. There's probably not a lot of passion and feelings in laying your life down for somebody, but it is a demonstration of love. On the inside of your handout, what I'd like to do is to contrast these two usages of love by two words. The word desire love and the word duty love. Now, if you're here and you're not married, or if you're still in sort of the honeymoon stage of marriage, you might look at what I'm saying and go, ugh, duty love. Who wants that? You might even be thinking, poor Seth, I thought he had a much better marriage than this. He has to do a lot of action and commitment, and wow, I need to pray for Seth and Mindy. Well, you can always do that. Prayer's welcome. But there's a different kind of love that's needed than just desire duty. Now, desire love. One of the reasons that desire love is so strong and masquerades for love is because it's built on several illusions. Remember when you first meet somebody, it's very easy, if there's a physical attraction, to idealize the person into just their strengths, or even more than their strengths. Somebody you just assume they are. Somebody that for the most part we just kind of assume, oh, they're just perfect. Oh, Mom, you just have to meet this guy. Or you have to meet this gal. Man, she's hot. We idealize the person. Second illusion is we idealize at the beginning the relationship. Oh, we just click on everything. We've just got such amazing chemistry. Well, you're happy for that, and that has its place. But it's going to take. But reality is also going to be set in. We also tend to live with the illusion of putting our best foot forward, and the person seeing our best foot forward, and we see their best foot forward, but we don't see that back foot. This is in our culture. We say love is blind. Everybody else can see your boyfriend or girlfriend's back foot except you. If we idealize the person, the relationship, and just see the front foot, this illusion creates a tremendous amount of, call it what you want, infatuation, passion, desire, love, strong feelings of love. Again, that's a good place. There's nothing wrong with those things, and we enjoy those things. It's just that you're going to need a different kind of love, what we're calling duty love, to build a marriage. Let me illustrate this. I want you to imagine that you are dating. And in your head, I want you to think about a park that you like to go to. You and your boyfriend, girlfriend, you've had picnics at that park. Hopefully, not in the winter. You've had picnics in that park. You've taken walks through that park. You've fed the ducks in the pond. You flew some kites on a great spring windy day. That's really nice. That's sort of like dating. You got that nice park, it's really cool, and you get married, you have your honeymoon, and now you're married. You come back, but you are legally married. But do you really have a marriage? Have you really built anything yet? You are legally married. It's easy to assume in that situation that we're married just like our friends are married, who've been at it for 5 years or 10 years or 20 years or 37 years. And we should be almost as far along as they are. Now, in reality, when you come back from your honeymoon, instead of having like this great house, imagine a house as marriage, instead you come back from your honeymoon to this. You have a vacant lot. And upon that lot, you are beginning to build your marriage. You will have the sewer people come out from the city, and they will build a sewer line into your property. You'll have the electricians guys build an electric line, and a water line will be built in. You'll have a backhoe come in and dig out the footing for, is that what they call it, footing? Footing? Engineer help here. Footing? Foundation. All right. Hey, there's a good word, foundation. Foundation for marriage. Okay. They're going to dig out the dirt. The framers are going to put the wood in. The cement truck's going to come in and build a foundation. You're going to see some pipes. If you've ever had a house built, you see this go on. Now, you wait until that concrete is done. The framers come in. And then you have things like painters paint, plumbers plumb, roofers roof. But do electricians elect? Not really sure about that one. It takes a long time to build a marriage. And there's really no escaping any of this. You have to do the same kinds of things no matter how many times you're married. There is no escaping the electric line, the water line, the sewer line, the footing, the framework, the roofing, the painting, all of those things. Now, over time, you have an opportunity, depending on your building, to maybe build something like this. Now, that's not going to happen overnight. Let's go back to the first slide, Lisa. What you can put on that piece of property right now is a tent. Now, if you like camping and your life is fairly simple and the weather is particularly nice, that might be pleasant for a while. Now, if you're a guy, you might like that, but most ladies are not going to be happy with living in a tent on that piece of property. They just assume that you're going to be about business to be building something, again, like this. Now, over time, what you're hoping to build is something that has both some strength to it in the nature of the relationship and some beauty to it. It's a place in the relationship that other little ones can enjoy at whatever age as they're growing up. Or maybe your parents will come and live with you. Or your mother-in-law may come and live with you. Or people in your church or your life group may come over to your house and enjoy something of what you have built. Now, there's a really important order in duty and desire love. In dating, we usually start with desire love, no problem there. And then about the time you start planning your wedding and having to make all kinds of decisions about stupid little things that seem insignificant to you, but are really important to the person you're marrying, you discover that desire love is starting to kind of get a little shaky. And what you are learning is duty love, to defer, to submit, to go along with what your bride wants her wedding to look like, or vice versa, or the groom. This is the beginnings of duty love. Now, when you come back from your honeymoon, you cannot assume that the engine is still going to be desire love and the caboose is going to be duty love. If you're going to build a marriage, the order of those cars on that train is going to do a 180. The engine on building a marriage is duty love, and the caboose is desire love. That is a very important thing. I often tell young couples, the train that got you to the wedding, to the altar to marry, it's a good train, but you have got to get off that train, deboard that train, and you have to get on a very different train if you're going to build a marriage. Ephesians 5:31 says, "For this reason a man will leave his father and mother, be united to his wife. The two will become one flesh." This is a long process of becoming one. In one sense, we become one on our wedding night. In another sense, we become one at the wedding ceremony. But in another sense, becoming one is a lifetime experience of many years, a long process of two people becoming one. The promise of future love. Malachi 2:14. God asked the people, why? Or the people ask why. The response is, "It is because the Lord is acting as the witness between you and the wife of your youth, because you have broken faith with her, though she is your partner, the wife of your marriage covenant." Covenant is a strong oath, promise before God to your spouse, to your family and friends. Now, I enjoy weddings. I enjoy doing weddings. And if I'm not performing a wedding, I enjoy hearing. And one of my favorite things is always the vows. Love to hear the vows. And about half the time, the couple wants to write their own vows. And that's really cool. I love that part. We wrote our vows, and then you have the repeat after me vows. That's pretty cool, too. But the best part I like is when each of these folks write their vows. Now, if you listen really closely to the vows, what you normally hear is expressions about present love, present tense love. "Oh, I love you so much. You're my soulmate." And those are good things. I like that. But that's really not vows. Those are expressions of feelings about the present. What a vow is more like it's an expression about what you can expect from me in the future. The kind of love that I'm going to give. No matter how I'm feeling, no matter if I've had good days or bad days, no matter whether you've had a good day or a bad day, no matter how the tides of my emotions are going to fluctuate, you can count on me to love you, period. I am going to love you. I'm going to set my sail in that direction and come hell or high water, no matter what obstacles I have in me, which is my greatest obstacle, or what obstacles there might seem in you. I am going to love my girl. That's what a vow is. That's your commitment. Hopefully, she's made the same commitment to you. Now, vows are important because in the early years of marriage, especially the first year, as you've heard in my story, this can be very unsettling, two people becoming one. And for me, what my vows helped me to do was to stick with it, to keep going, to keep moving forward with what I vowed. Another reason vows are important is that you have no idea that what's really driving you is a consumer model of marriage, what I'm going to get out of it, rather than the covenant model of marriage, what I'm going to give to it. As we've said, you have no idea, we have no idea. I had no idea how self-centered I was until I got married. I was a consumer driven in my marriage, unbeknownst to me. And in this process of letting go of the consumer model and becoming a covenant model of marriage, that took some time. And in reality, it's still taking time. And then vows also allow you to provide security for your spouse, that even though things are tough, I'm not going anywhere. Helping romantic love to fulfill itself. I love this example from Matthew chapter 5. You've heard it was said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. I tell you, love your enemies, pray for those who persecute you. Now, is he talking about desire love there? Hardly. I don't really like spending quality time with my enemy. Having coffee with somebody that doesn't like me, not a fun thing. Don't like that, would rather not do that. But he's saying love your enemies in terms of that's my duty. Love your enemies, pray for those who persecute you, that you may be sons of your Father in heaven. In other words, this is the kind of person I'm going to be. It's because this is the kind of person God is trying to make me, because this is how God is. And here are two examples. He caused his sun to rise on the evil and the good, not just the people that are just so lovable, and sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous, on both. That's the kind of love he's trying to build into me. The paradox about duty and desire love is this. If after I get married, I hold on too tightly the belief that desire love is most important, and it's your job to make me feel a certain way before I act in love, you are, over time, going to lose both. Instead, what has to happen is I have to let go of desire love as a first thing and make duty love a first thing and desire love a second thing. And over a long period of time, the likelihood is that you will have both or some semblance of both. Now, when we were first married, you've heard some of my story, but I would like to illustrate it through the use of some liquids, which sent Lance into great consternation, especially regarding all this electrical equipment up here. All right, is this good here? All right. Now, when I got married, I was sort of like this, except even more grape juice is in here. The feeling, the desire love, the feelings of love, I mean, I was sky high when we got married. I just didn't pour enough in here. And that was really cool. But during the first 3 months of marriage, including the first month when I rolled over and I told you I had no emotion that morning, scared me, I had something going on in my head that was very troubling to me. And that is, I found myself being very nitpicky about Mindy. Now, not verbally, but just in my head. Just as little criticisms, small things. Well, why didn't she? How come she can't? Oh my gosh, wasn't taken. How come? And this just went on, just kind of like this engine humming along day after day after day after day. Now, after a month, when I had that thing of waking up and no emotion, and then at our 3-month anniversary after coming back from our wedding, where I realized that I was failing at accepting her, I knew I had a lot of work to do. And so I began to, in trying to overcome the critical thing, I tried to attack it by being grateful. And so every day I'd write down something I was grateful to Mindy about, and I would tell that to God, and I would tell that to her, and I would tell that to any friends that I was around that day. And kind of a cool thing happened. After about a week, I noticed that my emotional tank was kind of filling up again. And then when I got away from that habit and slip back into my habit of being nitpicky and critical, little Mr. Critical, Carl the Critical, of little things, then I noticed that my emotional tank was going down. Now, what I realized was my emotional tank had very little to do with her. It had a whole lot to do with me. Now, what I was doing was every time I was critical, I was poking a little hole, little pinhole in my emotional tank without me knowing it. And another one here. And some here. And another one here. And without making any connection to this, let's see, this is where you all can pray. Without making any connection with this until about 2 months afterwards, that was my emotional tank. Hey, it's still in there. Okay, this is rare for me. Okay, this had nothing to do with her. This had everything to do with what I was thinking. Now, the more that I was grateful to her and grateful to God and grateful to my friends for her, the more my emotional cup did well. In fact, gratitude did wonders for my cup. And you will see that duct tape does another of its wonders there. The wonders of duct tape. The emotional tank. All right, deciding to love. Ephesians 5:28 says, my coffee go. Can't preach a sermon without coffee. Husbands ought to love their wives. Ought is the word of ethics, of morals, of imperative. Why is that important? Because I'm going to run into, as I'm building a marriage and running an electric line and sewer line and power line and building the foundation, I'm going to run across things like miscommunications and misunderstandings and a conflict and disagreements and sometimes some harsh words on my part or insensitivity on her part or my part. There are a lot of things we're going to run into. It's because we're self-centered people. And it's going to take a moral imperative to love that's stronger than just desire love or feeling love. Now, this should not surprise us. If you have a kid, you are used to waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning to change a screaming kid's baby's diaper or to feed them. And even though that's annoying, you don't say to the kid, it's not fair that I don't get to sleep while you don't sleep. You don't do that. You're not driven by desire love. You're driven by duty love. Of course you're going to do that, even though it's difficult. I don't know anybody that enjoys getting up in the morning to go to work when their alarm clock goes off. But you do it out of duty. You do it because it's the right thing to do. There's a moral and ethical imperative. Love has a moral and ethical compartment to it or driver to it that overcomes whatever self-centered needs I particularly have. On the back of your handout, the last thing I want to talk about is vertical love. 1 John 4:16. In the Bible, marriage assumes that if I'm going to build something like that house that we saw with the big pitched roof and the lights, that it's not just going to be a product of horizontal love over a long period of time, but it also assumes that there's a vertical love component here that is most needed. 1 John 4:16 says, so we know and rely on the love God has for us. Now, if I'm relying on how my spouse treats me and how they relate to me, I'm going to put us in a bad situation. We call these expectations. And now you become the critic of whether they're meeting the expectations or not. And love and criticism, love and expectations, They do not coexist. I go somewhere else for my deepest expectations. I want to be loved. I want to feel important. I want to be respected. I'd like to be admired. I like to be in a place where somebody is thrilled that I'm around. Now, nobody treats me like that like God does. This is the wonder of the gospel. And as we sang about being free earlier today, this is where we are most free, not to have you come through for me, but free to, when I come home, to be a dispenser of duty love in the hope someday and at different times of having desire love. 1 John 4:9, this is how God showed his love among us. He sent his one and only Son into the world that we might live. We might live, not physically live, but real life live, relationships. This is love, not that we love God, that he loved us and sent his Son as an atoning sacrifice for our sins. That is our model. Love is something you build. Now, it took me a lot of years to understand what I'm going to share with you next. If you don't have this yet, and you're just a few years into this, that's okay. It takes time. But after 37 years, I can tell you that when I go home at the end of the day, when I walk through that front door, I am a builder. I'm a builder. And it really doesn't matter what kind of day Mindy had, whether she had a great day or a terrible day. I'm walking in, I'm going to go find where she is, and I'm going to build love, whatever it looks like. It doesn't matter what kind of day I had when I walk in, good day or bad day, challenging day, awful day, discouraging day. When I walk through that front door, I am a builder. Now, it doesn't really matter when I walk through that front door what my feelings are telling me and what I'd like to do. When I walk through that front door, I'm thinking, does my girl need somebody to listen to her day? Does she need some encouragement? Does she need somebody to talk to? Does she need companionship? Sometimes my girl needs my absence more than my presence. And I need to be good with that. Sometimes my girl needs me to go, when our kids were little, take them down to the park for 30 minutes. Go do a load of dishes or a couple loads of laundry. But whatever it is, when I walk in that door, I am a builder. I'm not sitting around, oh, well, what about my needs? When is she going to do this? And the wonderful paradox about this is that the more I'm a builder with duty love, the more I experience desire love. It's a tremendous paradox. Jesus talked about this in John 12:24. Truly, truly, I say to you, unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, it remains alone. But if it dies, it bears much fruit. The grain of wheat, unless the grain of wheat dies, it remains alone. But if it dies, it bears much fruit. Now, what does that have to do with what we're talking about today? If that little grain of wheat is, but desire love is what I most want, and what I most need, and I'm not going to give it up in the place of duty love. I'm not going to put duty love first ahead of desire love. You're going to be like that little grain of wheat. It'll just sit there on your counter by itself. And there it will remain, alone. There's something in every marriage where desire love has to die, meaning it goes to second place, and duty love goes into first place. And if that dies, then we have a chance to really build something here. What he calls bears much fruit, a whole field of fruit. If I die to the consumer model of marriage, of which we all begin, and I take on the covenant model of marriage instead, the paradox works the same. Duty love over desire love. Now, in every home, virtually every home, in our current culture, if you look under the roof of almost every home with their kids, we parent our kids with covenant love, but we live in our marriage as consumer love. And that is a great mistake. If you're a parent, you know how to do covenant love. You know how to sacrifice, get up in the middle of the night, do whatever you need to for your kids. But somehow we just sort of just assume that that's really not needed in marriage. I really shouldn't have to work all that hard. If it's really love, it shouldn't be that difficult. Good luck with that. Good luck with that. When Jesus Christ was on the cross, he hung there. He wasn't saying, don't you guys see what I'm doing for you? Don't you see the love of the Father he has for you? Don't you see my own love for you? You guys come along and you're laughing at me and ridiculing me and throwing taunts at me as if I'm just some nobody. He didn't do that. Instead, he said, Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing. And he gave up his life for the good of you and the good of me. Let's pray together. Father, we pray that you would give us a fresh glimpse of the kind of love that you have for us. A duty love. She sacrificed for us in our place. You were willing to give up yourself. Father, you were willing to give up your own son for the benefit of creatures who, for the most part, we really didn't care all that much about what you thought or what you wanted. Hardly gave you the time of day unless we were in trouble. But once we have tasted of that kind of sacrificial love, and a love that is strongly for us, no matter what cost there is to itself, how can we not emulate that in our marriages? Holy Spirit, we ask you to open our eyes and our hearts to see ourselves as we are, and to move in our hearts to love like you do. Move us from consumer to covenant. Move us from the demand for desire and the importance of duty love.
We at Pacific Church of Irvine invite you to join us every Sunday at 9:30. You can also visit our website at pacificchurch.com.